Now I have the pleasure of introducing Beth Courtright. She began caving in Kentucky in 2008, then moved to New Mexico in 2012. Her background is in biology and environmental education. In addition to Lechuguilla, she is currently involved in survey and exploration projects in Grand Canyon and Montana. Beth, I'll let you go ahead and take the reins.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to hear about camping in Lechuguilla Cave. Before I get started, I do need to give credit to all of these awesome cavers at the bottom here whose photos I'm going to show in this presentation. Just thanks everybody for helping me show these aspects of our travels and our camps in Lech. So the camps in Lechuguilla are set up mainly to help expedition teams get the most out of their time and efforts in the cave during these longer expeditions, usually about a week-long expedition, as well as to reduce impact caused by those longer day trips that a couple people have been talking about. I'm going to go through a bunch of different aspects of cave camping, especially specifically in Lechuguilla. I'll try to cover the logistics and generally just what it looks like for us as we live and work underground for a week to carry out all of the climbing and science and survey and exploration goals that everybody's been talking about today and will be continuing tomorrow. So just first, a quick orientation to the camps in Lechuguilla. This is a line plot of the mapped passages in Lech, and the entrance, is at the top center. There are currently 4 active camps in Lechuguilla. Those are the Deep Seas Camp in the western branch of the cave, Big Sky in the southwest, and then Rusticles in the near east, and Grand Guadalupe in the far east. And until about the late 90s, there had been 4 other cave camps as well for a total of 8, but those 4 have since been closed and they're no longer in use. Typical camp trips are up to 8 days long, and it usually takes us about 4 to 8 hours in cave travel time to reach the camp. I've camped in Lech, I believe, every year for the past 9 years since I started going on one of Hazel's expeditions, and all of those have been in the west and southwest. I have not camped in the east, so most of the photos and info and stories I have on here will be from Deep Seas and Big Sky camps. As you can imagine, the planning for multi-day trips into Lechuguilla starts long before, sometimes years before the actual expedition. I'm not going to go into the whole permit and proposal process. Rather, I'll stick to the actual act of currently camping in Lech. So you can see here in the background my packing list. I usually start here and lay everything out the week-ish before the trip. And you saw Hazel's gear just on the previous presentation. Here's one example of mine during before one trip. Getting ready involves a lot of packing and unpacking and packaging and repacking, and it definitely doesn't start off this organized. But eventually it gets there. It gets to the point where I can shove all of this stuff into a very large cave pack. And it's sometimes hard to wrap my head around, but I just keep thinking as I'm packing, this is everything I could need or want for a week of working and living underground. And I'm going to pack it all these parts and pieces into a bag that's comfortable, hopefully enough to carry, drag, tether, or otherwise push and shove all the way to a cave camp. Camp packs end up usually being around 30 to 50 pounds, but that's dependent on the goals of the expedition. So, there might be more climbing gear for some trips, or some, if there's science goals, more science gear. And also, what each person opts to bring along, like Hazel was talking about, our luxury items. Things like cameras and flashes can also be particularly heavy additions. And we do have to leave room for group gear. like the survey equipment that you see here that we're going through and checking out from the cave resource office at the park. But once everyone's all packed, comes maybe the hardest part of camping in Lechuguilla, and it's the getting there. We've heard on the most recent talks today that this is where a lot of people have trouble just adjusting to the atmosphere in the cave. It's 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit and 100% humidity, and it's very, very different from the surface environment usually, and it can take a lot out of you. So we hike these about 2 miles across the desert to the entrance. And really from the time you leave the sunlight and plants on the surface, it's a rather vertically intense cave. There's the entrance drop with a tethered camp pack. We have to go through the airlock system, and others have talked more about the culvert. Let me get to the next, there we go. The culvert pipe kind of starts the entrance series, and you can see Hazel there all geared up with vertical gear and her heavy camp pack. So, and then we make our way through the entrance series to Boulder Falls, which we've seen a couple times today already as well. Boulder Falls is about a 150-foot drop, pretty close to the entrance. Here, John Lyles is standing at the bottom, and I'm the little red dot in the middle with my camp pack tethered below me. And there are a wide variety of passage types as we travel through Lech to get to camp. This particular spot is just one obstacle, the Little White Bastard, on the way to the Southwest camp. I kind of wanted to show that it's not all giant walking passage. It's not all huge rappels and drops. There are some climbs and crawls and scrambles, and we make our way through those and down the ropes behind me in that tunnel, and end up right next to the beautiful Lake Labarge. This is one of a couple gloves off areas where we take off our dirty gloves, and tiptoe around the lakes while holding onto the wall in designated spots, and then also stepping on designated spots. So you can see James there with his camp pack and making his way around Lake Labarge. And we're also trying our very, very hardest to keep our balance at this point and not tip backwards into the lake with all of our stuff, which would be rather bad, and bad for the expedition, bad for us personally in our time there, and really bad for the cave environment. So we're on our way to Big Sky Camp at this point. Going to Big Sky has more benefits in addition to seeing Lake Labarge and the Labarge borehole. We also walk right through the Chandelier Ballroom. And here you can see our camp packs, and Derek, James and I stopped for a picture, and I'm laying down there to cool off on the rock. Not a bad place to take a break on our way to camp. We're definitely very privileged to have seen these areas. And eventually we do make it to camp. Soon after going through the ballroom, you do come up to Big Sky Camp. And at this point, it's been a few hours since we left the dry, sunny Carlsbad Desert. We're super sweaty in the 100% humidity and still getting used to the darkness. And also, there's now about 1,000 feet of rock between us and the surface, and we're facing a week of hard work in the cave environment. Our first task when we arrive is to set up our camp. Each person, or sometimes a couple, has their own spot on a plastic sheet or a plastic tarp. In the previous photo you saw, James and I were on a very thin, like painter's tarp. This is a little bit thicker. This one here, I believe there's just to the left there, looks like the footprint of a tent. So that's kind of what we mean by tarp. And this is where we sleep and eat all week. The purpose of the tarp is first to protect the cave from whatever comes off of us. So it's catching like hairs and bits of skin or stray food. It also serves for a time to keep us clean and off the gritty cave floor. Although that usually ends by about midweek for most people, but I'll spare you that for now. So this is an example of a pretty clean looking tarp with everything put in its place. You have a sleeping pad, a sleeping bag, your food, clothes. I see a cup in the back there, a spoon, and there's a couple water storage around the stoves in the foreground there. There's definitely a variety of camp organization tactics. It really just depends on personal preference again. There's also a variety of comfort levels, as you can see in the photos here, and different gear preferences. So just as you would have in, say, backpacking or any other multi-night outdoorsy trip, some cavers bring luxury items like a pillow, candles, fairy lights, like Hazel was mentioning, little speakers to play music. Maybe those are all mostly Bluetooth now from your phone, or even chairs and chair setups. Others prefer a lighter pack, so they might bring smaller pads, like the 3/4 length pads, or even on the top photo there, stick their feet in their pack instead of bringing a full length pad and sleeping bag. And here's Hazel looking at some maps and notes spread out on her tarp, probably preparing for the next day's survey goals. And this is also an example of a shared tarp with the 2 pads there together. This is just another view of some tarp setups at Deep Seas Camp. You can see some of the flagging tape that shows kind of the camp boundaries where we don't go outside of. And you saw this next photo on the first slide there, my opening slide. This is another view of Deep Seas, that upper part of Deep Seas Camp. And it looks like everyone's sort of sitting around on their tarps, which you'll see a little bit more of in the rest of my presentation. This is kind of a usual scene most evenings after a day of work in the cave. So I have a short video to play. I apologize in advance if it plays slowly for anybody, depending on your internet speed. But we have Max I think he was sitting there writing the daily trip report and organizing notes. Tim and James and Andy are lounging about. I think this was actually just after dinner one night. Thomas took a video. And you can see the group there the group gear in the center of camp there. That's where we'll put survey equipment. There's flagging tape, there's a bolt kit down there. And the yellow things there were the extra bathroom booties. There's also a sheet there that tells kind of where we're going each day, and I'll give some details about that. I think Hazel came back from the bathroom after she forgot something essential. But this kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like around camp. And just like Hazel was mentioning a couple minutes ago, Max is the expedition leader here, and he was finishing up some notes from the day and making sure everything's organized and in bags so it stays in good shape for the rest of the week. Ooh, sorry, we'll go to the next one. There we go. Okay, so you've seen kind of what it looks like for us around camp, or typical camps in Lech. One question I get a lot is, what do you eat? What do you bring to eat? Well, again, everyone has different preferences and tastes, so it was kind of hard to put this together because everybody brings different foods. I'll quickly go through kind of what I like to eat and drink, and what I've seen on, most often on Lech expeditions. For breakfast, most everyone likes a hot drink in the morning, and because you're kind of chilled after getting up, and a small breakfast to get get a good start on the day. I don't like coffee or oatmeal, so I make a sort of hot chocolate drink using powdered milk and Carnation instant breakfast. I eat Pop-Tarts every morning. or for most of my in-cave breakfasts. Other people are using Mountain House, like freeze-dried meals and instant oatmeal or things like that. There are many different strategies again for lunches because, maybe even more so for lunches, because these happen on the go and you're out away from camp for the day. But for the most part, I try to get some variety in there day to day. I'm looking for, high calorie foods with a good amount of fat and salt content, because we're usually sweating profusely and burning lots of calories each day. Andy had mentioned, I think it was Tim's heart monitor on his trip, that on the hardest days was reading upwards of 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. So yeah, for lunch, I'll make a wrap I'll take a tortilla and cheese and sausage, or use the powdered peanut butter up there that I've found recently. And I take some little jelly packets that you get from McDonald's and make a peanut butter and jelly quesadilla. Sometimes people break out the pre-cooked bacon. I'm not a fan. And then there's also, things like power bars and similar. Again, a wide variety of snack preferences out there. I try to bring kind of a combination of salty and sweet and fruity snacks each day. So, that might be a little bag of mixed nuts, a couple chocolate bars, and say Skittles or, raspberry energy blasts. And I usually throw in some string cheese to add. Some people will bring more conventional bars like energy bars or protein bars or similar. Dinners at camp are, for the most part, we eat freeze-dried meals, and these are back at camp. We pour the boiling water into something like Mountain House or Backpacker's Pantry or similar. That's pretty straightforward. We're using stoves to boil water in camp. But it's not really cooking per se. You're not allowed to have any wastewater in Lech. So there's no boiling noodles and then dumping the water, and there's definitely no washing dishes. So for the most part, it's just water that goes in our stoves, and then we'll pour that into either a freeze-dried meal or into a cup to make a drink like coffee or tea. And where do we get that water that we use to make all those freeze-dried meals every day? There are designated water collection spots near each camp. This is, I think that's Ellen at Lake Louise in the west. So this is the water source for the Deep Seas camp. And here you can see, actually Lake Louise has calcite rafts on the top. So she was using the base of the pitcher while only holding on to the handle and not touching the water, using the base of it to make some waves and get rid of move away the calcite rafts. And then she dips it in there to get a pitcher full of water. And then she'll walk it back to a designated filling area and pour it into our bottles. So you see all the flagging tape on the ground there in front of them. That basically written on that flagging tape is instructions on where to pour and how to pour and where to set bottles, where to not set bottles. And what they're doing is they're being very careful to not touch the spout of the pitcher to the mouth of the bottle to avoid contamination of the lake. We fill both, small like daily water bottles and also larger containers to keep at camp. There are a few other water spots like this in the cave using that pitcher method. Another method or system that's used, this is in the southwest. It's a siphon tube that's coming up, or it's in a higher lake. The other end of it is up in a higher lake, and then it comes all the way down to the trail here. So this is the water source for Big Sky Camp. And you just turn the spigot on the end, and on the end of that, black part that's connected to the tube. And again, don't touch the end of the spigot to the mouth of your water bottle. And So after hearing that we can't have any wastewater, which Hazel mentioned also means that there's no washing your hands, there's no rinsing off. The next most common questions I get about cave camping are, how do you stay clean? What do you do? And how do you handle the bathroom situation? Well, we use a lot of wet wipes, and we also have hand sanitizer to put on our hands after using the bathroom. Most parts of Lech are very, very gritty, either with sand and grit or corrosion residue, or there's rock flour that gets absolutely everywhere. So it's really best to take a sort of wet wipe bath on your tarp at the end of each day. I sleep much better if I don't feel, sandy in my sleeping bag and sticky from the day's sweat. And also, staying clean really helps to ward off things like chafing, bad rashes from your knee pads or places where your vertical gear might rub. We do brush our teeth, at least I do, just like any other day, and then carefully spit into a Ziploc bag and carry that out with our garbage. In the bathroom, which is another designated area near camp, here you can see Blaze on what we call the transition zone. This is where we step into booties that these black shoe covers that Blaze is putting on as he steps over this threshold into the bathroom area. This is where we store urine all week in wine bags or Ziplocs or similar containers, and then dump it all in one spot in the morning before we leave camp. All solid waste comes out with us, and it's carefully packaged to avoid any accidents on the way out. And like I said, double, triple, or more bagged in the thickest of the freezer type Ziploc bags that you can find at the grocery. It still sometimes smells, but that's life. When we're away from camp during the day, we'll pee in a bottle or similar, and then empty it into our urine storage back in this camp bathroom. The poo and toilet paper and any other waste that you have, used wet wipes, go into your stored place in the bathroom area. I won't make you look at this picture any longer because that's disgusting. But it is a big and important aspect of camping in Lachigia. So now that you've heard even more about life in Lech Camp, I'll just give a quick look at what a typical day looks like on an expedition. So at an agreed upon time, alarms go off, and if Hazel's around, she might start singing. Everyone eats breakfast and uses the bathroom as needed, and we load up our day packs with whatever we need for the day. We sign out and leave camp to complete the day's goals, and those might be survey and exploration goals, climbing, science objectives, and then when we get back to camp, the time we get back really depends what we were sent to do and how long it took for us to get there and how far we traveled from camp. Once we get back, we'll eat dinner, get cleaned up, fill up on water if needed, and prep for the next day. And that's kind of a very simple version of the average expedition day in Lechuguilla. And here, like Max and Andy are looking at a portion of the map, probably discussing the goals of the day or the next day. And here's that paper I was talking about that we leave in the center of camp that says who's going where, who's on what team, and what time they're expected back. We leave this in camp so that if there was an emergency on the surface and for some reason someone came in to get us or to tell us something, they would know each team's location in the cave, and they might even go there to find us if it was very pressing.
5 minutes left.
Thank you so much. And they might go find us instead of waiting for us to get back to camp at the end of the day. But I've never seen that happen. It's just a very in case thing. And just like that, we've come to the end of an expedition. We pack up everything, dump our urine, hopefully remember to take a fun group picture like this, and then any other waste like bits of stuff on our tarp is folded up inside the tarp and carried out. So we don't shake off our tarp. We don't brush anything off onto the floor of the cave and camp. Everything is taken out with us so that we can reduce our impact at those camp locations. We even turn our headlamps on high and go around and check really, really carefully around camp for any stray garbage or hair or fuzz bits from our clothes before we leave. We travel in teams of 3 or more and reverse all that rope work that we talked about in the beginning, and go back up through the culvert and the airlock, and eventually make it to the surface. And hopefully we've remembered to stash our hats and sunglasses outside the entrance because it's bright up here. For reference, I'll put a photo up. That's what we looked like before the trip. So the 4 of us there. And at the end of the week, we're a bit dirty. We added some bruises, probably. And what we were talking about in chat a little bit ago, what doesn't come through in the virtual presentations is, the smell and the dried sweat. Speaking of dried sweat, sometimes the trip involves so much of it that our shorts end up standing up on their own. Here's Max and Hazel at the end of a trip looking happy and dirty and scruffy. But you can see by their smiles that, it means that it was a good, safe, successful expedition. And that's what it's about for camping in Lachigia. And with that, if I have a minute for questions, or I can leave it for the next person.
Let me have a look. Where's the timer? Yeah, we've got 2 minutes for questions. We had a load of questions, as I'm sure you can imagine, Beth. So one that seems to be creating a lot of chat is, how much do you drink per day and how much do you pee per day?
Okay, so actually, I think Andy just mentioned that people are drinking a gallon or 2 a day on a typical expedition day. And depending on how much, or depending on our goals for the day and again, how far we're going from camp and how hard the day is expected to be, we'll judge how much water we need to take with us, and also the location. Like, some days we might go out from camp and be working very nearby one of these water sources, so we wouldn't have to carry as much. Other days we're going 3-4 hours in the opposite direction, and we have to carry all the water for that time. Switching over to how much we pee, hopefully a good amount. We've talked a lot today about dehydration in Lechuguilla, and it is a concern. So we do try to drink a lot, or if you start feeling bad, you're encouraged to drink even more. And yeah, hopefully peeing a pretty good amount. Hazel, you had like a record last trip, I think, of gallons of pee.
I worry about my health.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes. Right. So it's better if you're peeing more. You kind of, I don't know, the bathroom situation is sometimes a hot topic in camp, because you're trying to make sure yourself and everyone else is staying healthy, and so
we usually do it based on color, right? So
right, based on color and quantity. And so if you're not peeing very much and it's very, very dark, you're probably getting pretty dehydrated, and you should, we'll say, okay, fill up that water bottle. You should try to drink all of it before you go to sleep tonight, during dinner or something. So we try to watch out for each other there. And yeah, That's,
Yeah.
So sorry to give you that one, Beth.
no, that's,
I definitely think
should've
that's
known.
words of wisdom to end on there. All right. Well, thanks so much, Beth.